I'll start with the eyes closed. Because the eye in this character has some sort of very large curve like that in terms of character design, this is the hole. It will have this shape. I need to keep extruding this inwards, and then as I do this, I must keep the snap to surface on. So I don't know why it is getting crazy right now. Let me change this. Let's see if I closest. Now this is not having. Let's see. Okay, so as I start extruding this, I should also start shaping the hole. There would be other ways around, and then we might, of course, based on the mesh geometry that we have, we should have an idea of which would be the best organization. Actually, maybe I should start this going straight ahead to the design that I want, and then I start making subdivisions with new face loops. Yes, so maybe this will be the far edge for that one. Then it will start having a curve. Then here maybe I'm trying to reuse the geometry that I have. Yeah, so this, I think this would be the shape that I want for the corners. Let's see how this looks. Yes, maybe this keeps going down. There doesn't need to be exact matching, right? But it's not a bad idea. It doesn't mean it won't work for the rig if it's not. So provide the shapes are good enough, that's what matters. So I sense here that something is a bit awkward here, so okay, this is the quad group that I wanted, as just like this one. So for the corners, and then of course I could go on to making adjustments here. Also, this doesn't matter as long as it is snapping to surface onto the This is good. Okay, so now let's just make slightly better distribution to this mesh. We must be careful because certain tools do not use the snap tool along. I'm not sure, so you must know which one does. I know the grab does in this setup. We should be aware of that, because if we make some transformation that does not apply the snap automatically, then we'll have some trouble. Now I can start making some edge loop here, and for example, this should be close enough to the center. Well, the curve of the eye is there everywhere, right? So maybe this could be a little closer anyways. Since the eyelashes in this model are so large, they will hide the gap. That makes some extra effort here, by the way. Okay, this looks good enough. Let's see if the smoothing is good. Here, smooth tool. I'm not sure if the smooth tool it will snap, so after I smooth, just after I make some grabbing and then apply. Just a bit of work here. And this, as we get closer here, maybe it's good to smooth more and get this closer. More concentration of vertices here in the corner region, which is very delicate. Then let's make more edge loop, one more, and this one I'll put right in the middle. A last one which I'll put very close to the border, because the eyelids will shrink a lot with the subdivision surface. I hope this will be fairly good enough, but sometimes it's too much and it becomes a bit heavier on posing, so we should be aware of not exaggerating too much according to our hardware capacities. Okay, this looks good enough. Let's see the color of this mesh. It's correct, but it's a bit bizarre what's happening here. Let me activate here, otherwise I guess the snap tool will fail. Bring this closer to the corner. I believe this is important. So let's just make some adjustments here, and this, let's not forget the shape that we want here. Let's see from there. Yes, nearly done, nearly done. These edge loops, maybe I can make them go slightly up for this case, just to compensate for the change that I'm doing here. The important is that everything is snapping, except when we are working on other vertices, right, which are not directly into the eyelids mesh stuff. So yes, for this one we should inactivate this, or we can have serious trouble accidentally mesh that shouldn't be on that surface level. Okay, let me just finish off here. This same thing, let me, oops, I have still this thing. No, I want individual, so I can do this. Sometimes this appears, some artifacts, but this is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong. Also because after we've made this, we'll have the shrink wrap modifier, so this mesh will grow outwards from the eye surface level, and it really will get into the appearance of a thick eyelid skin. Okay, let's see now without this. Now it looks much better, both mesh topology wise and mesh geometry wise, and shape and design wise. For adding the object modifiers for the eyelids mesh, I want first to have a vertex group for it. Start by adding a new vertex group, mod shrink, because the top and bottom eyelids meshes, they share the same mesh in terms of vertex group. Since I have these perfectly cyclic face loops, I can just use this operator, control numpad positive or negative to augment or reduce the selection. Then I can assign, and let's see if that's correct. Yes, now I can lock all these vertex groups anyways, because they won't interfere with wave painting. Modifier properties tab. Let's add a shrink wrap modifier, put it right after the armature modifier. Target the eye surface for the left side. Then this strange thing happened. Of course, all the mesh of the body mesh object, the character, is being shrink wrapped to this object. We don't want that, so we need to target a vertex group, which we have just created. For the offset, I prefer to develop this from the solidify modifier, which we'll be creating next. So I leave it at 0. Nearest surface point is usually the best. On surface, this, when we have this, doesn't seem to have to make much of a difference. Maybe if I have other things here, it makes some difference. So I prefer to keep just as like that. And let's then create a solidify modifier. Again, we target that vertex group, the same. Of course, I need to place it right after the shrink wrap modifier, but before the subdivision surface modifier, which is affecting all the character, renaming, and same here, just for some clarity, right? Then, for the solidify modifier, what we want is the offset. Let's put it to 0 to see what happens. We see start to get thicker. I think putting it at 1 is the best, while the shrink wrap modifier is at 0. These options are usually relevant to avoid artifacts, so fill is interesting, and only rim also. For the thickness, it's a way to avoid the interpenetrations. And since this mesh will be deformed on top of that eye surface mesh object, sometimes at the rest position this might look good, but as we deform, if the mesh topology is not good enough, if the mesh geometry is not good enough, and if these object modifiers are not properly set, then we might have, you see here there's some interpenetration artifacts. If I do this, it's already good enough. Of course we can make it a lot to avoid, but then it starts to get kind of bizarre, right? This is a good setup, I guess. There are some things here that I dislike, this excessive crease. I can solve this on edit mode. So what we don't want to do here is to have these on cage and edit mode options enabled on edit mode, because as I edit here with all those things enabled, although it looks tempting to do so, it can disorganize in unexpected ways our mesh, and it's confusing. So as a rule of thumb, it's better to turn this off unless we know a peculiar case in which this is useful. Of course, this is good for visualization, right? But here what I want is root transformations, and so I don't want anything affecting this setup.